So I played roguelike Mountfall by the group Mountfall on Roblox, and it's a pretty nice game. If you really, really like Monad Studios. No hate to them, but they really like their fighting roguelike, so much to the point that other people have been infected by this love and have created a new subgenre of RPG on the platform that feel like carbon copies of the original source. In most cases, this turns out to be absolute shit, but Mountfall has interesting ways to innovate the concept and deliver something that at first glance feels like a new experience. But as you get dragged deeper into the game, you slowly realize you're pretty much just playing the original game with different steps anyways. Before I play the game, as usual, I went into the Discord server and Roblox group to gather background info on the content, where it's coming from, and who it's made by. The entire group is ran by the user Dario. Actual user Darilios, whatever. But since the former is what they go by on Discord as well, it's what we'll use too. I played a game under his profile that was made after the creation of Mountfall, so I'll assume it's a personal project of sorts. It's a horror maze type thing, and the only objective you have is to escape. No explanation on why, how, or the big robot thing that destroys your anus when it gets you, but overall feels pretty bare bones, but effective in what it tries to do, so this person does have some experience in coding. As for the Discord server, it was a hot mess. The announcements page was full of devs passing the time hosting game sessions with community members and desperately fixing game-breaking bugs on the side. As a matter of fact, upon my joining, they were actually hosting one at that time, so I hopped in real quick to see what was going on, and it was one of the dev team members dicking around in a game I don't know. From the looks of the server, it seems Dariu's in primary damage control for whenever the game breaks, and the rest of the devs handle other stuff, I guess. Animations, decals maybe, building. There are a lot of devs for a project where one person is likely doing most of the scripting, and that combination for upstart games doesn't bode well for the game's future. More on that later. But for now, it seems that as recently as the beginning of the month, countless bugs and glitches have appeared in the game that have forced shutdowns, restores, and a lot of complications and the like, because the game apparently doesn't have a solid way to deal with exploiters as of this moment, and the team is spread too thin to handle other issues. But they can do game sessions. Anyways, to the game now. Joining, I was greeted by mystery with a white wall going to nothing and a brief bit of story by an NPC nearby. Already attention grabbing, except both seem to be red herrings and you don't really do anything with either bits of information once you go to the mainland. The tutorial is handled through interactive world experience. It gives the controls through notes on a wall. But honestly, if you're going rogue, just go rogue all the way and don't even bother with an explanation, since everyone will pretty much know all your movement systems as soon as they see your UI. Plus, I find that just telling the players how to do stuff is kind of immersion breaking. Even if it's through a note on the wall, it's still kind of fourth wall breaking, if that makes sense. The adventure to find the boat was a good way to introduce the player to the world and the advent of exploration, so I'd say it's a good way to do a tutorial more or less.
I saw that 12 hours ago. Where's that? I'm gonna have to go to the team. You actually have to spell out your full name with my left hand.
I was initially mildly disappointed by the visuals, the lack of really concrete mechanics. I would have liked a quest system, but this is a rogue type game, so I can go without it. But holy fuck, the building in this game just completely blew me away. If there's anything I can give the game props for, it's for executing the simple yet detailed style of world to a legendary degree. I've gotten to the age where I really don't give a fuck about how pretty games look and how many hair follicles I can see on my character's bare ass or whatever. So keeping Roblox's blocky style while adding nice detail to like things as simple as down to the ground and the walls and terrain and whatnot makes me feel like the devs care about the game, but they're still more focused on the gameplay. So many games miss this, and it's no wonder why most fancy RPGs you see today are dead as hell. The only thing that took me out at times were a few glaring build issues and noticeable points, and even one that affected my gameplay directly by trapping me in a hole I couldn't climb out of, and two people with voice chat came along and made fun of me. If there was position saving in this game, I probably would have been fucked, but I was just able to relog and continue on. The only objectives I could find for what to do after getting to the mainland came in the form of delivery quests and NPCs selling something, so I took a deep sigh and realized what the game truly was all along. If I had to describe it, I'd say the experience was like a roguelite or a demo or something. It's the same loop, but just with faster progression, as a lot of the things in the game aren't locked to exclusive tasks or things to do or any goal at all. Just hand over the cash. Scarily easy to obtain, by the way, and no, it won't drop when you die, which is awesome, but not when it's the main form to progress. This game doesn't feature any permadeath elements unless you seek them out through the activation of a hard mode, but I was too lazy to do this in my playthrough. If you couldn't tell, this is where the game starts to show its cracks, at least for me. I was able to overlook the occasional build error and the minor bug given its recency, but even if these issues were to be fixed, the game rings hollow with some issues Rogue has which come from its style of exploration action game. There were moments I felt like I was walking through a base plate, only minor decor here and there, but really nothing of substance or anything to do, with some places feeling downright unfinished. Well, I'm pretty sure they are unfinished, so I can offer some forgiveness, but it's far too common in many of the wilderness areas. Rogue had the decency to patch this up with random NPCs scattered around the world that would say random shit or have some sort of further purpose, but here, nothing. Enemies are only in concentrated areas like in another game, tired of saying the name, and are pretty buggy. There are chests in some places, but chests are bugged right now. Like I said, there's not really too much to write home about this game. It's really just the experience you would get from the original content. It really sucks because when I was playing, like, the world is detailed to a very nice degree. It's just that there's not really too much to do in that world, and even when I found like a cool cave system or something, I would just find, oh, it loops back into itself, into the same area, and there's nothing really to do there. It's just like another place to look at. There's not really anything of substance, no reason to go into the cave. And it really does detract from the exploration open world aspect of it, and that's something that open world games on Roblox at least need to get more in touch with. They need to have a proper content to size ratio to keep the players engaged without overwhelming them in the face of a massive world, or, letting down their expectations by not having anything in that massive world. And since we're pretty much talking about both games at this point, I'll circle around back to the roguelike thing I said before and hone in on the progression in this game. It's simple enough and easy, too easy almost, given there are almost no repercussions for dying to players, enemies, bosses, or anything really, and instead of making the intended feel of death being something to be avoided, it feels like an annoyance more than anything. Now, I'm not saying this to say all RPGs should be roguelike, but through the loss of currency, status, reputation, items, whatever, games discourage death and make it something to be feared. But every single time I found myself accidentally walking to a random hole an area would have, I became annoyed because now I would have to walk all the way back to that area from the spawn again. And it broke a lot of the immersion for me, just from the repeated death cycles, where death should be really scarce and something that is incorporated into the game somehow. For example, Rogue Lineage did that very well. Whenever you lost all your lives, it wasn't like you were just forcibly wiped and thrown back into the world. You had to go through the process of resetting your character through the House of Purgatory, which was integral to the story of the game, further immersing you into the world, and also serving the purpose of refreshing your character every single time you wipe. Before people rage, I'm not saying that all RPG deaths should be like that, but I just think it adds a nice touch of, substance to the game, rather than just killing you and saying, oh, you died, restart from your last checkpoint or whatever. Bottom line is, games should make it so dying has stakes. Talking about stakes, yeah. This game has none. I was able to AFK in the game so many times to do other shit that I eventually got so bored exploring the mostly empty world that I watched this YouTube guide to see the fastest way to get OP, and followed it to an endgame area I was able to access as a starter and wasn't really threatened by it. The game's catch is that your spawn is stuck there until you escape, but it wasn't really a perilous situation. I ended up quitting not because the area was particularly difficult or I was fighting for my life constantly, but simply because the parkour to escape through a lighthouse area was kind of messed up because of the janky movement systems, so we just ended up giving up for the day and leaving it there as is. On the progression, to basically no one's surprise, it's a currency-based form of growth where you kill enemies and do stuff for NPCs, get money, use the money to get better gear, rinse and repeat. No leveling system or anything because that's overdone and generic. At this point, this sort of thing is too. I don't hate the practice entirely. It does have its own merits and, offering rewarding feeling, but when it's made so easy for the players, it detracts from the efforts behind the game because people can speedrun it within 20 minutes. I don't think they should make the game from scratch, but some changes have to be taken into consideration if they want to avoid going down the rogue clone path. For example, why are you combining E to interact with click detectors? It's fine if you want to commit to one or the other, but for God's sakes, don't do both. It's jarring and it feels like the game is trying to be rogue even if it isn't. What's the point of the Abyss if it's basically just a grind loop for easy progression? Why is not an endgame area? What's with the replica of areas from the game you don't want to be considered a clone of? Referring to way back earlier, I mentioned the dev team. I don't doubt the team isn't good at what they do, and there's obviously extensive work being done on the game on all sides, which I do give props for given how quickly the game blew up in popularity and how fast the team had to adapt to such a player base. But from what I've seen from the announcements board, the overall feel of the team's seriousness, and the game's incomplete state despite an average of over 2,000 players daily, I believe there is more efficacy to be asked for. The game is a breakout hit. It has to be treated like one. Synergy has to be at the forefront for all development to prevent something like when your contribution breaks the code for the game. Yeah, I don't think there needs to be a dev purge or anything crazy like that, but some organization and collective shit gathering would go a long way to making Mountfall polished and ready for the delivery of new content and long-awaited bug fixes. The last thing I should probably talk about before I wrap things up is the combat in the game, a very controversial subject in the Mountfall community, and from what I've gathered, people either love it or fucking hate it. I didn't get too much hands-on experience, but from what I can gather, it imitates Rogue in the sense that speed is key, and beginner players, well, don't have that. Attacks require precise coordination due to very small hitboxes, and the fact that missing an attack can result in a stun lock from the other party, rendering you trapped until they finally kill you. Very reminiscent. They heavily feature a posture system, which I'm not going to explain, but apparently is complained about because it builds up even when you're blocking, which is what I thought it was supposed to do. But anyways, yeah, adding posture when you already allow for stun locking is a no-go in my opinion. It just makes it twice as hard to not get fucked over in combat if you didn't land the first hit. Also, blocking is weird and doesn't really have an obvious tell if you're doing it, besides a quick yellow flash. Movement lacks some vital tells too, such as rolling and climbing not really being synced well, or having animations at all with the way your character is actually moving, but these are only minor issues I see. I understand the game's new and things will take a while to give a complete verdict on its quality, but these are just my observations of things that can affect the game in the future if it continues going down the path I see it going. And I'm not specifically a Rogue hater. I like adventure games with mystery elements, hidden lore, and a lack of linear direction, but when you do these things simply because you're following someone else's blueprint, you literally just get a shittier version of the original content. And by the way, Rogue is kind of shit by design in so many aspects, so I'm not really sure why it's revered like the golden standard for roguelike adventures on Roblox. To conclude, a little innovation, coordination, and a fix of the janky-ass combat system would go a long way in keeping this game going, but until then I wish Mountfall all the best. I have been Spirited Default, and thank you for watching. Wow, I didn't realize how harsh I came off listening back to some of the audio. I know it sounds kind of mean or whatever, but like, I mean, most of this is just coming from a place of like frustration in the sense of there's so many Rogue clones, there's so much opportunity in this game. I had a fun time playing it, minor bugs, all that's junk, but like overall I just see a lot of room for, you know, its own personal growth to do something unique. And I was just trying to like, I guess, market that or get like that Mountfall team to like snap back to reality in a sense. If you like it, please drop a comment or share or like or whatever. It doesn't really matter to me, but yeah, thank you. See ya.